So, anyway, good morning and welcome back to football season. Oh, wrong show. I'm sorry. Um, we are speaking this morning about spiritual normalcy, but of course we can't, go through September 11 in this country at least without at least acknowledging the events of 2001. Personally, I honor all of the heroes of that day. I recognize the sacrifice of so many people who we lost on that day. And I am really ready to get past it, and I hope the world is too. Jeff Parnes, founder of New York Says Thank You, wrote about today saying, when Americans lend a hand to one another, nothing is impossible. We're not about what happened on 9/11. We're about what happened on September 12th. And I want everyone to just take that in their heart and remember that tragedy is tragedy, but the way we come together afterwards is what spirit is all about. So here we are, another day. The sun came up in the east into rainy skies as usual. Bacon sizzles on the frying pan and burns to a crisp again. Traffic will be heavy and some idiot will do something stupid to make it worse, as usual. The boss will call a project status meeting that everyone thought was next week. Or a teacher throws a test on a book they never assigned. Just another day in the mines. No daylight, no fresh air, no change in routine. Typical. An earlier generation in military service coined a term for it, SNAFU, situation normal, all fouled up. Of course, their version was a little more colorful, and I'll let you use your imagination. SNAFU was even used as a cartoon character to demonstrate all of the things that you can do wrong while serving your country. So we can live that life, or we can redefine our experience. And here's how. We start with recognizing our human compulsion toward normalcy bias, where the kinetic energy of normal is so powerfully resist that we is so normal is so powerful that we resist new information and it traps our subject in a bubble of ignorance, leaving them unable to recognize change. Surprisingly, the deterioration of normal does not necessarily happen suddenly. Example. At the height of its influence, the Roman Empire crossed the English Channel, something both Napoleon and Hitler failed to do, and occupied the southern part of the British Isles for about 3 centuries before the weight of empire caused its rapid decline. During their occupation, Roman customs, styles, and practices became the norm in that area and even continued in a diminished scale for some time after their departure. But within a generation after the Romans abandoned Britain, the long suppressed pre Roman societies and cultures began to reemerge with old boundaries and tribal loyalties filling the power vacuum left in the Romans' wake. In this extremely broad and fanciful example, two paths of normalcy bias are running parallel to each other. One group, not recognizing the change in the wind, clings to their Roman experiences, but with no reinforcement and little foundation, they fade away within a generation. The second path is the deep founded pre Roman cultures who, while suppressed for centuries, continue to exist on the fringes of Roman influence and through the sheer power of normalcy bias sprang back into prominence like a spring uncoiling at the trip of a switch. Shifting our common consciousness is often measured in geologic time, requiring generations of experience to move the needle perceptibly. Our common consciousness is the sum of everything we have collectively experienced and shapes how we act or react to any particular stimulus. Each of us also has our own consciousness and subconsciousness that informs how we individually act or react to stimuli. As individuals, we are capable of evolving much more quickly than the human race as a whole, and as individuals, we influence the evolutionary curve of the common consciousness. Think of a bucket of nearly freezing water. Add 1 cup of boiling water, and careful measurement will confirm the temperature of the water in the bucket has risen, and we are not able to recover a cup of boiling water from the bucket. Normalcy bias has stolen the heat from the boiling water, forcing it to try to conform to the water in the bucket, and there is nothing the water in the bucket, absence of additional factors, can do about it. Normalcy bias also explains why people panic in emergencies. Our state of normal is suddenly and violently upset, but our minds are so comfortably entrenched in normal, we cannot immediately adjust our thinking. We are comfortable, set in our ways, and mentally lazy. Given the choice of changing our thinking or staying the same, we choose the status quo. Leave well enough alone. Sleeping dogs don't bite. But life says otherwise. This dog is awake and not happy. Faced with a menacing growl and bared teeth, we are forced to respond. We experience some form of the 5 stages of grief. We deny anything is wrong. Good doggy. Oh, it's all right. Nobody's going to hurt you. Then we become angry that our perfect little world has been violated. Sick dog. Stay. I'm the alpha here. Do as I tell you. Then we mentally run through a hastily compiled list of reasons this should not be happening and fight to regain control of the situation. Here's a treat, doggy. I'm your friend. Go after that guy. He's the one who woke you. We watch our power and esteem fade away and spiral downward into despair. Please don't hurt me, doggy. Then reality sets in. Our brains click into gear. Feet, don't fail me now. And we run because there's nothing else we can do. For experiences like the death of a loved one, we usually pass through these stages fairly quickly, and in a short time, depending on the depth of the relationship, a new normal sets in. Some life-changing experiences are much more challenging to deal with, however. Some people are just much better suited to deal with the unexpected. And for some, reality simply takes a vacation. Many of you have used the example of repetitious military training as comparison to how our spiritual practice is strengthened over time. The absolute chaos of combat requires individuals to act and react in predictable, practiced ways, to perform the actions expected of them without thinking about the steps of the task at hand or the chaos going on around them. Just as our uniformed brothers and sisters learn their duties in peaceful, controlled environments, building confidence and skill until muscle memory supplants external stimuli, we practice our spirituality into our normalcy bias. We come to church, mingle with like-minded people, say our affirmations, declare our unity with spirit, and do affirmative treatments to enrich our lives. We do our daily practices of meditation, prayer, and mindfulness. Then life throws something ugly in our faces, and we are in the chaos of combat. We know the natural state of spirit is peace, but do we remain peaceful? We know the nature of spirit is to love, to give without judgment, to create and build, but are we free of judgment in this moment? Are we feeling love? Are we building or looking for something to destroy? A relationship, a career, ourselves? When our normalcy bias leans toward self destruction, we can count on Spirit to provide rainy days for us and to burn our bacon. If we truly believe we live under a cloud of bad luck, our highways will always be jammed, and Spirit will provide more idiots than we can imagine to populate our water cooler stories of woe. When we assume the mantle of victim, Spirit is obliged to run us afoul of one authority or another. In the Essential Ernest Holmes on page 30, we are surrounded by an intelligent law which receives the impress of our thought and acts upon it. This is the law of our life, and we may use it consciously for definite purposes. The manner in which we address life shapes how we experience it. Todd Mitchell, writing in the 12 Conditions of a Miracle, sorry this is long, but it's important. Alignment is analogous to what a sailor does with a sailboat. The currents of the winds and the water surging all around a sailor are constantly changing. Very difficult to predict and totally out of his control, but the sailor has experience on his side. He understands the nature of the currents of wind and water. He knows precisely how to trim his sails and adjust his rudder so that the current carries him exactly where he wants to go. It may seem as though the great currents of your world are wild and turbulent too. Sometimes the currents carry you in the right direction, but more often it seems as though you are struggling against them. You feel so helpless, you simply sigh in resignation when things go awry, but part of you knows that there is more. Part of you knows that you were not born as a child of spirit to be a helpless victim, blown about haphazardly by random forces. Part of you knows that you are meant to master the art of sailing, that you were meant to soar gracefully. Now, the sailor does not sail perfectly the first time out, but learns from its mistakes, observing how others successfully perform and adjust their thinking until success becomes commonplace. Science and the science of mind is persistent failure culminating in verifiable success. Naysayers cite the evolution of information coming out of the CDC during the early months of the COVID pandemic as evidence of the fallacy of trusting science. What they fail to recognize is the real-time evolution of the science we were all experiencing in our 24/7 news cycle world. Imagine how the story of the electric light would have been printed if it were seen if 75 different reporters had been filing stories 12 times per day from the time the Edison team first birthed the idea to the day they finally developed a commercially viable product. I could see the headlines. Edison bilks millions on electricity scam. Kerosene lights first time every time. They said it couldn't be done, and it can't. Is Edison secretly working for the oil monopolies? Not to mention the number of improvements that rapidly followed. Who in 1878 could foresee our modern LED lighting, and does anyone really think the science of lighting is finished? Spiritual normalcy bends toward evolutionary outcomes, always building on our beliefs, expanding our world of experience. Spiritual normalcy is dragging our common consciousness into spiritual alignment, one enlightenment at a time. Lawrence Kushner, writing Honey from the Rock, says, "We understand that ordinary people are messengers of the Most High. They go about their task in holy anonymity, often unknown even to themselves. Yet, if they had not been there, if they had not said what they said or did what they did, it would not be the way it is now. We would not be the way we are now. Never forget that you too, yourself, may be a messenger." From time to time, I recall a picture in my mind. We'd been visiting some relatives of my father's in Long Beach, California, and we were driving home, and freeways didn't exist today then the way they do today, so we were driving through town someplace, and I remember being stopped at a traffic light and just casually looking out the car window at this building that was across the street, probably 4 or 5 stories tall, and I could see two guys, well, it must have been an apartment window, and they were in tank top shirts. It must have been a summer afternoon. It was hot. Their window was open. Didn't have air conditioning, of course, in those days. And that picture's in my mind. And that picture has been in my mind for over 65 years now. And I have no reason to know why. But it's there. And I think about it sometimes, and I think it's just there to remind me that there is more to this life than what I am experiencing. There are random people everywhere doing random things that I'll never know, I'll never understand their contribution, and yet that picture of them is still in my mind. And no rhyme or reason, but I can see it today as clearly as the day it happened. So when we are faced with a little rain in our day, remember that floods are no laughing matter, but droughts bring down civilizations. If we put bacon on the stove, we have a responsibility to keep an eye on it. We have driven this road before, and we know we should leave earlier. Leave too late? That's on us. Spirit gives us choice. With choice comes responsibility. Screw up an assignment? Apologize and do the best you can to make it right. Faced with an unreasonable expectation, stand up for yourself. Then let the chips fall where they may. Maybe it's time for a new job. Spirit has a strange way of giving us these messages. Edison failed over 6,000 times before creating a successful light bulb. Talk about a day in the mines. So let the dog bark. Powerful prayer practice repeatedly produces positive experiences, and all we need to remember is SNAFU. Spiritual normalcy always feeds us. Thank you.